Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I hope that you are doing well. Today I wanted to share my thoughts on the new Urban Decay Naked palette. So this is the Naked Wild West eyeshadow palette, and I did film two different looks using it, the look that I'm wearing today, as well as more of like an everyday warm-toned smoky eye. So when I first saw the photos of this palette, I was excited for it. I'm someone who still really enjoys the Naked line, and I know that everyone has different feelings about the Naked line. Some people are over it, think it's been played out at this point. And I think that's just because a lot of people want to see more from Urban Decay and maybe something a little bit more unique and colorful because they've done really cool palettes in the past. But truthfully, I generally like their Naked palettes, and their updated Naked palettes have become some of my favorites over the years. When it comes down to it, I actually think this color story makes a little bit more sense for their Naked line than some of their previous releases like Naked Ultraviolet or Naked Cherry, because the majority of the shadows in this palette are neutrals. There are a few pops of color, but I think they did a really good job with this color story, and it's just going to be a very approachable palette for people who tend to wear neutrals but maybe want a few pops of color, or maybe someone who wants a half warm-toned, half cool-toned palette. So I just thought I would share my thoughts on it with you guys. It is available now, so I'll link it in the description box below for those of you that want to check it out. It retails for $49, and it is a completely vegan palette. It comes with 12 different desert-inspired neutral eyeshadows, and you also get a dual-ended eyeshadow brush. Like I said, there are definitely a good mix of cool tones and warm tones in here, but what I like about the shades they chose is that you can kind of mix the warm tones and the cool tones together and everything will flow really beautifully. Sometimes it's hard to know what cool tones and what warm tones to put into one eye look, but I think they did a good job with these shades because you could really mix and match them and everything will look really nice and put together. The formula is very blendable. Both the matte shadows and the shimmers blend out really easily. They layer really nicely, so you can build them up. You can go in with a light layer for more of a sheer wash of color or build them, especially the dark shades. They build really well. Sometimes when it comes to darker shades and colorful shades, they're super intense right away, which is nice if you want a super vibrant look, but it can be difficult to work with and difficult to blend out. So I like the fact that these are a little bit more buildable, especially because it does seem like a good everyday palette. Some of the matte shadows are pretty powdery, especially the lighter shades, so just keep that in mind. You will experience a little bit of fallout, and as you dip your brush in, you'll kind of see powder on your palette as you're using it. But the deeper shades are a lot less powdery than I was expecting them to be, which is nice. The shimmer shadows are really gorgeous. They're very, very smooth. They have great color payoff. You can use your finger or a brush to kind of layer them up, and I think the colors they chose are perfect for this palette because, again, they can be worn with the cooler mattes or the warm-toned mattes. I know color stories like this were kind of popular a few years ago, so the first two palettes that I thought of that were somewhat similar would be the ColourPop Dream Street and then also Urban Decay's Born to Run. The ColourPop Dream Street palette is no longer available, but if you guys have that one in your collection, I would say that you could probably skip over this one because the shades do end up looking pretty similar. I think you could create some similar looks. Now, Urban Decay's palette is slightly more desaturated. I feel like it's maybe more ideal for everyday wear if you don't want super intense shadows, because Dream Street does have some really intense warms, some really vibrant colorful tones. So I do find that when I use that one, maybe I get a little bit more of a rich look overall. The other palette is Urban Decay's Born to Run. I do feel like because that palette has so many shades in it, again, you could probably duplicate a lot of the shades in this palette with that one. So if you already have that one and you're happy with it and you like the formula, again, I don't think you need to run out and buy this one because there are a lot of repeat shades between the two. Otherwise, if you have a lot of neutral eyeshadows in your collection, I mean, if you just cover up those two pops of color, you really do get like a very neutral palette. So there is a chance you probably could dupe this within your own collection. So just keep that in mind. I think the reason why I was so drawn to this is because over the past year or two, I've really been into super colorful eyeshadow. So a lot of the palettes I've been buying have been super intense and vibrant, and it's just kind of nice to have something that kind of brings it back to the basics and has staple neutral eyeshadows in a formula that's very easy to work with. I've also been into like a pop of color on the lower lash line, so I do feel like this palette has been perfect for that reason, and it just has a nice mix of warm tones and cool tones, like I've said over and over, but I think sometimes it can be hard to do that, and when palettes try to combine warm tones and cool tones, it looks a little bit muddy, a little bit messy, but I think they did a really good job with this color story. So yes, it is a very basic neutral palette with a few pops of color, but if you love Urban Decay's formula or you don't have a palette like that in your collection, I definitely definitely think this would be a great option to grab. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on the palette now that I've had the chance to use it. I forgot to mention, I did get this in the mail as PR from Urban Decay, but I was planning on purchasing it anyway when I saw the initial promo photos, so I would have paid full price for this, and if I did purchase it with my own money, I would be happy with the quality. I wouldn't have any regrets because I do really enjoy it as a whole. So let me show you guys two different looks using the palette. The first one will be like an easy, everyday, warm toned smoky eye, and then the second look will be the one that I'm wearing today. So let's jump into it. So for this look, I'm going to focus on the more warm tone shadows, and I'm also going to incorporate that really beautiful gold. So I'm going to kick it off with the shade Nudie and just blend that into my crease and then up as a transition color. I did prime my eyes with an eyeshadow primer and then just set everything into place with a matte shadow, which is what I typically do. This shadow is pretty light and also pretty powdery. You can build it up a little bit though, so you might have to go in a few times just because the shadow formula is a little bit more powdery. And I'm just going to do the same thing on the other eye. Next, I'm going to go in with the shade Ghost Town and blend that one into my crease. This is a really pretty rusty brown. It does add a little bit of warmth to the eyes, but it's not quite as red toned as maybe some of the shadows in the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. This is the type of rusty brown that I like. I don't love like super intense orangey reds these days. I definitely prefer something a little bit more toned down. So this color is perfect. I'm just going to go in with some of the shade Whiskey, which is just a true warm medium toned brown. And I'm just going to pack that on the outer corner to darken things up a little bit. I tried to get a little bit closer to the camera today because my camera doesn't have a zoom feature. I need to upgrade my camera and my lens one of these days. It's just hard to choose which one to go with, but I think you can probably see what I'm doing. So I'm just packing this color onto the outer corner. This is not the most intense, rich brown, so if you want a really dramatic outer corner, you're going to have to layer it up a little bit more. I'm not going for anything too intense. I just want to lay down the color, and then I'm just going to take the same blending brush I was using and just lightly diffuse it out. I'm just going to go in with a little bit more. The majority of this is going to get covered up by a shimmer shadow on top anyway, but I just want a little bit more depth in the outer corner before I lay down the shimmer shadow. So now that I have all of the matte shadows on the lid, I'm going to go in with the shade Rustler, which is a really beautiful bronze. This is just an easy shadow to apply all over the lid. And I'm just going to use my finger to apply it everywhere. You could definitely stop right here, and this is just a very easy kind of smoky eye without it being too intense. But I am going to go in with that gold shadow as well because it is so pretty. But I do love this shade all over the lid. It really completes the look if you're just going for a very easy bronze look. Now I'm going to take this really beautiful, intense metallic gold. This one is called Hold'em. And I'm just going to place that all over the center of the lid. You could totally wet your brush if you want a super intense look. But I just feel like metallic shadows always blend the best with my finger. And this one just kind of melts perfectly into that bronze shadow. It's not necessarily the most intense metallic gold that you'll probably experience if you do have other shadows in your collection, but I do think it adds like a nice pop to the eyes. And then whatever's left on my finger, I'm just going to pull in the inner corner just to make sure everything flows really well. And then I will do the same thing on the other eye, and I'll finish up with eyeliner. For eyeliner, I just used the Urban Decay Perversion liquid liner, and I created a slight wing. And for the lower lash line, I think I'm going to go in with the shade Ghost Town and start with that one and just blend it really lightly. I just want to tie things together, so I think I'll end up going in with the shade Whiskey as well. But let me start with this one and see how it looks. I am going to go in with just a little bit of Whiskey and focus that one on the outside of the eye and just lightly pull it in, just to darken things up just a little bit. And then I'll pick an eyeliner for the waterline. I'm going to use the Urban Decay 24/7 Glide On Eye Pencil in the shade Smog, which is just a medium toned brown. And I'm just going to run this on the waterline just to tie things together. My favorite Urban Decay pencil is the shade, I can't even think of it, Scorch. It's my favorite, and I couldn't even think of the name, but that was limited edition. So if you guys have any recommendations that were similar to Scorch, if you use that one, please let me know. That one was like a really beautiful golden brown, and it just looks so unique. So that's probably what I would normally go for, but I just wanted to use a pencil you could get your hands on if you were interested in trying it out. To finish off, I'm going to take the shade Standoff, which is just a nice subtle highlight shade, and I'm just going to blend that on the brow bone just to make sure everything looks nice and even. For mascara, I'm going to be using the Urban Decay Perversion mascara. This one is nice if you want just very fluffy looking lashes. It does provide a lot of volume and a lot of length, so it's just a nice all-around dramatic mascara. It's not quite as dramatic as the Urban Decay Lash Freak, so if you want super intense drama, that's the one to go with. But this one just gives your lashes maybe a little bit more of a fluttery look. To finish off the look after I applied mascara, I just went in with the ColourPop Lippy Pencil in the shade BFF, which is just a light, kind of pinky toned nude. And then I applied a little bit of the Fenty Gloss Bomb in the shade Hot Chocolate on top. And then the highlighter I'm wearing is Becca's Champagne Pop, and I also put that on the inner corner just for a brighter pop. I hope you guys enjoyed this first look. I just wanted to do something very quick and easy, kind of like an everyday smoky eye with some of the warm tones in the palette. I really love that gold shade. It's not too intense, but if you were to wet your brush, you could make it really shine if that's something you wanted to do. So let's jump into the second look, which is a little bit cooler and a little bit more colorful. For this look, I'm going to start with the shade Laredo and blend that into my crease and then up as a transition color. This color isn't quite as powdery as some of the other shades that I would typically use as transition colors in this palette, so I do find that I have to just take like an extra second to blend it out, but once I get it blended out, it looks really, really nice. I'm just going to build that up in the crease just a little bit. I am going to go in with the dark green shade next, so I don't want there to be such a strong contrast between my lid and then up, in this area as well. Okay, I think that looks pretty good, so I'm just going to do the same thing on the other eye. I like this shade because it has a little bit of like a pink undertone to it, so I just think it looks really pretty blended out all over the crease. So you could even stop there and just go in with one of the shimmer shadows, which I think would be really pretty too. But I am going to go in with the shade Text, which is a really gorgeous, like deep teal. I'm going to pack it onto my brush and then also pack it onto the outer corner. Now, if you're going to blend this shade into the crease, you're definitely going to experience a good amount of fallout. I'll probably get a little bit of fallout even just packing this on the outer corner. I was really pleasantly surprised by this shadow. Sometimes when it comes to the Naked palettes, a lot of the darker shades are like a satin texture, so it can be hard to really build them up. That was the issue with the Naked Ultraviolet palette, at least for me. There wasn't like a deep, rich matte purple, but this shadow is really intense. Now that the color is down, I am just going to take the brush and just lightly blend that up into the crease. I don't want a super intense look. I don't want it to be overly smoky, but I do just want it to look a little bit more blended. I'm just going to go in with a little bit more. I'm actually going to kind of cover the majority of the lid. I don't want to pack it on, which is why I'm using a little bit more of a fluffy brush, just because I don't necessarily need like that super opaque finish. I do want it to look a little bit more diffused, but again, I'm going to go over everything with like that silvery metallic, so it won't necessarily matter if this is a little bit messy looking. I just want the edge to look really smooth and even. I'm going to take the brush that I was using in the crease and a little bit of the shade Pony Up, and I'm just going to use that to really blend out this crease shade. It's like a really beautiful cool toned gray with just a hint of a blue undertone. So I'm just going to continue to lightly blend out the crease, and then I'm just going to do the same thing on the other eye. I'm going to go in with the shade Cowboy Rick, which is probably my favorite shade in the entire palette. It is so sparkly, so pretty. It kind of reminds me of like the old Urban Decay singles. Actually, they might still have those available. I just don't have any in my collection right now, but look how intense that metallic is. It is so pretty layered on top of any of the shadows in this palette. And if you want more of a sheer wash of color, you can definitely just like lightly brush it over the eyes, but I love how intense it looks. And then I'm just going to take the brush I was using and lightly blend out the edges. I'm going to apply some liquid liner in just a second, but I wanted to show you guys what the eyeshadow looked like before the liner. That metallic shadow really is so pretty. I think it's one of the best shadows they've had in any of their Naked palettes. So let me apply liner and then I'll do the lower lash line. So for the lower lash line, I'm going to start with the Too Faced Killer Liner in the shade Killer Turquoise, and I'm just going to run this on my waterline. This is very, very similar to the turquoise shadow in the palette. I've actually been having fun doing like a brighter color on the lower lash line. That wasn't something I really ever did in the past, but I've been inspired lately to switch it up, and I think it's a fun way to add color to the look, but also do a neutral look at the same time, like neutral on top and then more colorful on the bottom. Now I'm going to take the shade Bud, which is very similar to the eyeliner I just applied, and I'm just going to run that on the lower lash line. Now this one is a shimmer shadow, so if you don't like shimmer shadows on your lower lash line, you could go in with the matte green, but I like the way that they kind of tie the look together. Before I go in with mascara, I'm just going to take the highlight shade Standoff, and I'm just going to blend that on my brow bone, and again, kind of pull this color down just to diffuse any harsh edges. For mascara, I'm going to be using the Urban Decay Lash Freak, which is my favorite when I want super dramatic lashes. I always say this, but it is a little bit of a high maintenance mascara because you will definitely experience some clumping, but it really does give your lashes such intense volume and length. Okay, so this is the final look. I'm just wearing the same lip products as I did for the last look, the ColourPop Lip Liner in the shade BFF with the Fenty Gloss Bomb in the shade Hot Chocolate. And then I did apply the Buxom Wanderlust Glow Highlighter in the shade White Russian, and I also put that on my inner corner as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this cooler toned, more colorful look. I love that you can do two completely different looks with this palette. You can obviously mix the warm tones and the cool tones as well, but I just think it's a really fun palette to play with, and I wanted to give you guys an idea of what you can create. Obviously, you can go a little bit lighter, or you can even go a little bit more intense depending on what shadows you use, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. So let's jump into the rest of the video and I'll share my final thoughts. To finish up, I do really enjoy this palette. I think it just fits really well in the Naked line. It is a mainly neutral palette with a few pops of color, and I think compared to some of their other Naked palettes, this formula is really good. It's very consistent overall. I like the fact that they stuck with matte shadows and metallic shadows, and there aren't a lot of, lackluster satins in here or topper shadows. It really is just like a solid palette overall, especially for the Naked line. I think it's probably one of my favorite Naked palettes. My number one Naked palette is Naked Honey, and again, that one is more of a neutral palette, and I think that this one probably comes in right under it because I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of it, but at the same time, I can create multiple looks, which is what I love. Some of the Naked palettes are very monochromatic, like Naked Heat and Naked Cherry, so when you use those palettes, you tend to get a very similar look every single time, but I think because this one does have such a mix of tones and colors, you really can create quite a few looks just using these 12 shadows. So honestly, I am very, very happy with this. Is it a must-have in your collection? It's not if you have a lot of neutral palettes that you're happy with, but if you're looking for a staple neutral palette, then I don't think you could go wrong with this one, especially because it's just easy to work with. So I hope today's video was helpful if you guys were trying to decide whether or not you wanted to pick up the palette. If you do try it, let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.